The American Revolution wasn't brought upon by one single stressor. There had always been tension between the colonists, Britain, and the Native Americans. Britain organized the Albany Conference in order to make an alliance with the Native Americans, but they refused. The conference had a different outcome instead. Benjamin Franklin proposed that the colonists form their own army and to unite for common defense. This was the first step the colonists took towards self-government. Because the Native Americans decided not to make an alliance with Britain, war soon broke out. The French and Indians against the British. They were disputing over territory in the Americas. After years of war, the conflict was resolved and the land was distributed to the different parties. When the land was distributed, Britain gained most of North America, forcing them to impose the Proclamation Act of 1763. The proclamation created a boundary out of the Appalachian Mountains, stopping the colonists from settling further west. This stopped them from expanding geographically and economically. The proclamation was another way for Britain to take control of the colonists. After the war, Britain was in a lot of debt. They put the economic responsibility of the war on the colonists, imposing heavy amounts of taxes. The Stamp Act and the Sugar Act were two of the common taxes placed on the colonists. Britain imposed these taxes without having any representation of the colonists in Parliament. This outraged the colonists. Many of the colonists turned to smuggling so they didn't have to pay the taxes. This was one of the ways the colonists rebelled against British rule. All of these conflicts and many more caused the colonists to stand up to the British Empire, and the American Revolution began.
The American Revolution was an immediate and political success, but looking back in history, there were many flaws in the revolution and problems society didn't address. The American Revolution came to a close in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris of 1783. There was an immediate sense of peace because all nations ceased fighting with each other. The United States was able to move on with their own government with their new document, the Declaration of Independence. America was able to start forming their new government with a democracy. They had freedom and independence from Britain, which was the reason for revolution. Colonists called Congress to gather in Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Convention. Congress adopted a new constitution in which provided a stronger government. They also created an efficient executive and a check and balance system with the judiciary and legislature system. Even though the Americans' new government was considered fitting, problems from the Revolution started to resurface within the country. The Declaration of Independence, written during the Revolution by Thomas Jefferson, excluded blacks and women in the text. Although this didn't present immediate problems after the Revolution, the effects of exclusion came up many years later. Women vied for the same rights as men. They wished they were included in the Constitution since it stated all people were supposed to be treated equal. Along with others, women were not given the right to vote and were oppressed with many political issues. More than 100 years later, black slaves started rebelling against the government for their belief that they were equal to white men. This evolved into the Civil War. The Civil War split the newly United States into the North, who mostly believed in freedom of blacks, and the South, who needed the slaves for economic use. This went against the Revolution because the Revolution's purpose was for all people to be equal. This conflict was still not resolved until 1965, which was after the Civil Rights Movement influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. Even though there were numerous amendments made to the Constitution, both women and African Americans are still treated differently today. Some men still think that women aren't always as strong as them. No woman has yet to be president. Some men continue to look down upon women who join the police force or play football, believing they aren't capable of doing a man's job. African Americans have come a long way. In 2008, the first black president, Barack Obama, was elected President of the United States. He is the youngest and first black president the country has seen yet. This country is still trying to make the improvements that have been inflicted for more than 200 years ago. Even though there were some immediate successes to the revolution, it didn't completely end until the conclusion of the Civil Rights Movement. Even today, there is still discrimination amongst blacks and women, but the country is trying to improve their ways all the time. America is not perfect, and never will be, but the country was able to adjust for change and fix their ways, even if it did take more than 200 years.